Thanks for coming here today on this foggy day to cover such an important issue for us. And we have an important announcement, and I think it's going to hopefully help the city come to the table to negotiate through the PERB process. As you know, contract negotiations between the PBA and the city remain at an impasse. Our state supervised mediation was unsuccessful, with the city still refusing to negotiate in good faith or even make a serious offer. We're now petitioning to send the dispute to binding arbitration under the auspices of PERB, the Public Employees Relations Board in Albany. Under this process, the case will be heard by a 3-member panel consisting of an arbitrator appointed by the PBA, one appointed by the city, the other side of the table, a neutral arbitrator jointly selected by both parties from a list that's provided from PERB, the state agency. We're here today to announce our selection for the PBA arbitration panel member. This choice is an extremely important one, probably one of the most important choices we make in this process, because this is no ordinary labor dispute, bar none. For more than 30 years, New York City police officers have been grossly underpaid in comparison to other police officers in our area and around the country, both locally and nationally. In the past 20 years, we've been through 4 arbitrations and 2 negotiated agreements, but a gap of upwards of 30% still remains. Our argument is to be paid a market rate of pay, to be treated respectfully, paid respectfully, at a market rate of pay like professionals. Few things are as important to the health and vitality of New York City as the work that our members do and the public safety that we provide. Without safe streets, no other progress is possible in the city. The city is in the safe streets era because New York City police officers went out and put themselves at risk. No one else can take the credit for this renaissance. As the job of policing New York City becomes increasingly difficult and more complex, the city needs to pay police officers competitively in order to preserve and build on the public safety gains of the past several decades. The city has consistently refused to make that investment, and that's insulting to the people of the city. It's insulting to our members that patrol our streets. They've refused in lean budget years, where they say there's a problem, and they continue to refuse even now as the city is in the best fiscal shape it's been in some time. So when it's difficult financial times, we can't pay you. When we're in good fiscal shape, we still can't pay you, and that's just absolutely wrong. We don't believe they want to make the investment. When we reached a negotiated settlement with the de Blasio administration last year, we hoped that we were entering a new era of progress towards a fair market rate of pay for our members. But in the current rounds, we find ourselves back at square one. The de Blasio administration has offered nothing but delaying tactics, and we believe there'll be more to come, and unreasonable, bad faith offers that actually grew worse as the negotiation process moved forward. We're at the table. The demands of the city got worse as we sat at that table rather than making progress. So our current impasse in negotiations is not just a hiccup in our negotiations. It's not just we have to get over this period in our negotiations. It's a symptom of a long-standing, intractable problem, one that every New Yorker has a stake in resolving because it actually affects everything that goes on in this city and on our street corners. Our arbitration panel member needs to be someone who understands the vital role that New York City police officers play in this city, probably one of the most important roles. Someone who can grapple with complex economic and fiscal issues, and someone who can work creatively to come up with a fair, realistic solution. Ken Feinberg is that person. I believe it, and after we speak today, I believe you'll understand why we believe it. Many New Yorkers will know him from his work as a special master of the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund. In that role, he took on one of the greatest challenges our city and our country has ever faced. He sat with the victims and their families, which is an important aspect. He sat with the victims and our families and listened to their stories, including the stories of police officers and other responders who gave their lives on that day and who succumbed to injury and illness in the years that follow. His job was to understand that sacrifice and to ensure that it was recognized, respected, and compensated. His job was to value the invaluable, and he did it as well as anybody could have, awarding more than $7 billion in claims to the victims and equally important to their families. Since then, he's been called on to perform the same public service again and again. Following the Boston Marathon bombing, the Pulse nightclub attack in Orlando, the BP oil spill in Gulf of Mexico, and many, many others, and we can provide you with that list. Our arbitration case is a different issue, but it is no less challenging to solve. We needed an advocate in this process who has not only broad shoulders and a sharp legal mind, but also a human understanding of what's at stake for police officers, our families, and our city. So I'm confident after we have this discussion with you today, that you too will believe that Ken Feinberg is that person that can do that. So I respectfully will turn it over to Ken. I'm sure he'll make a statement or two, and then we'll gladly open up to any type of questions you might have, and we'll try to get the answers the best we can. Ken.
First of all, I want to thank President Lynch of the PBA for those kind words. It is a privilege for me and an honor to be asked by the PBA to act as a party-appointed arbitrator in this process. It'll be a challenge. I bring my experience to the arbitration table. I have conducted scores and scores of arbitrations over the years. Single arbitrations, 3 panelist arbitrations, and I can tell you that the key to any successful arbitration is the reality and the perception that the arbitration process is fair, that it is perceived as fair and just, and that however that process may conclude, there is a recognition, at least, by the parties and the public that the process has gone forward in a fair, impartial, unbiased manner. And that is what I will bring to this arbitration. I am here to listen as an arbitrator. I am here to study all of the facts as an arbitrator. And I will reach my own conclusions. President Lynch and the PBA have asked me to delve into the facts and the arguments that are raised in this particular arbitration and to help secure a just result. And I will do so. I will do so. Now, I must say, I have just read about the history of the past arbitrations and the current effort to reach a negotiated resolution, unsuccessful today. And I will make a few comments about that without in any way prejudging how I will approach the facts going forward. First, to the extent that arguments have been made that it's always better to negotiate a resolution than have one imposed by arbitration, I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. And I am optimistic, I'm always optimistic, that before the panel in this case completes its job and renders some sort of binding determination, a voluntary resolution can be achieved. I think that is vastly preferable than asking 3 arbitrators to impose a solution. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, I would say that in the overwhelming majority of arbitrations that I've been involved in, they have resulted in unanimous decisions. Even in those cases where different parties to the arbitration appoint different individuals. At the end of the day, if the process is fair, if it is perceived as just on a level playing field, so that the merits prevail, much more often than not, the panel, however it may have been constituted, reaches the same conclusion. I will be disappointed in this process if we don't reach a mutually, among the arbitrators, if not the parties, a mutually satisfactory result. That is always the goal in order for the result to be lasting and be perceived as permanent. The only point I want to make about the police department and why I'm so honored to be chosen by the PBA to do this. I am not coming to this assignment unfamiliar with the New York City Police Department and the PBA. In the 9/11 compensation fund, over 33 months, I met scores of policemen and their families and heard their stories of woe and tragedy and horror. And what we did in the 9/11 fund, as some of you may recall, is we provided those families at least with some financial security. We authorized payments, tax-free, of over $7 billion to the victims of 9/11. Federal taxpayer money, public money, coming from the US Treasury. And I had a chance to work and listen to police officers and their families. And I vowed at that time, if I could ever be helpful to the police department of the city of New York, I wanted to step up and do it. Secondly, I am amazed at the universal praise that comes forward from public officials and private citizens about this particular police department. In times of concern about foreign attacks and terrorist attacks and international safety, I hear and read over and over again about the ability and the efficiency and the success of the New York City Police Department. And it seems to me that in addition to praise that is words, I think that the deeds of the police department and the PBA deserve adequate compensation. What that compensation is will remain to be seen. Salaries, benefits, etc. I'm getting into that. But I must say that the day-to-day drumbeat about how wonderful the police department is in the city of New York in fighting crime and keeping the city safe and thereby encouraging investment and tourism, etc. When it comes right down to compensating the police for their service to the city and the nation and the world, I must say, I think that that is a very important assignment that is now on my shoulders, and it will be a challenge. I am, in getting ready for this, this press conference, I just looked at some of the facts, and I'll be educated going forward by counsel to the PBA, counsel to the city, my fellow arbitrators, but I am stunned by the fact that the first day that a uniformed officer, man and woman, race, creed, and color, very diverse, the first day that they take the pledge, the oath, and walk the beat, they make a starting salary of $42,500. Is that possible in this day and age? Is that possible? I thought it must be a misprint, a typographical error. $42,500 for the world's finest police force, the day they start. And after 5 years on the job, 5 years shouldering that responsibility, $50,000 salary. So I have my work cut out for me. I do acknowledge that. I really do. This will be a challenge. No less a challenge than 9/11 or the Boston Marathon bombings or the Pulse nightclub attacks or the BP oil spill. This will be a challenge. But when President Lynch and General Counsel Mike Murray, when they came to me and asked me with my crazy schedule and the fact that I live in Washington and I have to come up to New York as I frequently do, when they asked me, Ken, we would like your help, I think I thought about it for 5 seconds. If the PBA and the police department of this city want Ken Feinberg to try and do his best in helping the men, the women of the New York City Police Department, I will do so. It is such a diverse police department. It is so diverse. It is filled with men, women, every race, creed, and color. How do you attract those people to become professionals and walk the beat if you don't give them a compensation package of salary and benefits that are commensurate with the challenge and the responsibility? So I conclude, I acknowledge the challenge. I come at this with an open mind. I look forward to working with the city arbitrator, the neutral that is appointed, the party, the outside parties that will assist the city and the police. I will do my best to vindicate the trust that the PBA has placed in me, and I'm just honored to be asked to do this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. We'll gladly open up to questions, answer any kind of questions you may have.
Mr. Feinberg, your bio lists a number of the arbitrations you've handled over the years. It doesn't indicate whether you've actually been involved either as an advocate, as in this case, or as a neutral arbitrator in deciding wage contract situations. Have you had experience in that area?
Wage contract, no. I've been appointed as arbitrators, as a party-appointed arbitrator, an advocate. I've been appointed as the neutral, chosen by the other two arbitrators as being a credible neutral. I've engaged in scores of negotiations, not arbitrations, involving wages, contracts, contract disputes. So that won't be as unfamiliar to me as will be learning more about the history of the Taylor Law and the history of arbitration in the context of city government. That will be an educational process that I will, over the next few weeks and months, be prepared to sort of delve into. But I think I'm up to the task, and I am confident that I'll be able to try and strike the right posture in this arbitration to encourage consensus building, which I still think is very, very important if it can be reached.
And Ken is joining part of a team that we've had in place for a number of years. We've gone to PERB arbitrations, so we the 5 years running. The process, we know it, our staff knows it, we've been through it, others seek our advice on how to do it. What we're trying to bring to the process is an honest approach from the city's side to honestly and fairly look at the problem and make honest, decent proposals to New York City police officers. So by adding Ken to our team, I think it becomes an even more dynamic and robust team moving forward. And between the minds that I surround myself with, I think we can get there. We hope the city does the same.
Pat, so when was your last contract agreement, and how far back did it go to? And then what's been happening since?
Well, we've settled a year ago, and that went for a 5-year period, both backwards and forwards. That's expired this past July. We then immediately sent a letter to the city saying we want to get to the bargaining table and negotiate, and we did that. Unfortunately, the city did not negotiate fairly with us.
Were there any meetings?
Yes, we've had a number of negotiating settlements. Then when we felt we weren't getting any place, we believe we're at impasse. We went through the PERB process of mediation. That was not fruitful either. We both formally and informally sat at that table and made no progress. As I stated in my opening statement, not only did the city give a bad proposal, but it got worse as we moved forward. We come to the table honestly, as we always have. What I do is try to negotiate for New York City police officers, not others. We expect the city to do the same.
And what are you asking for?
We're asking for a market rate of pay. We're 30% behind our fellow professional police officers, our sisters and brothers, that quite frankly are working the same street corners we are. We're asking to be paid like state troopers who now patrol our streets. The MTA has a better schedule, better pay. So we're losing our best police officers, and they're deciding to go to other better paying jurisdictions. And sometimes those jurisdictions are right on our same street corners. So what we're saying is, let's hire quality police officers, give them quality training, but pay them so they choose to stay in our community, in our uniform with our shields.
Pat, At the moment, it would seem like you've got an advantage in the sense that there are no contract agreements this bargaining round, would seem to give you more leverage. If history is any guide, the city is probably going to look to strike a deal with some union to try and box you in a little bit and invoke pattern bargaining.
Yeah.
Have you spoken with your fellow union leaders about keeping the playing field
Right.
basically open?
My approach has always been the same. They should negotiate for their members, I'll negotiate for my members. Whether there's a settlement or there's not a settlement. What we want is to look at the issues that New York City police officers face and resolve our issues. I don't get in the way of other bargaining with other unions, nor should they get in the way of my bargaining for my members. We negotiate for our members. We believe you look at the facts that we face, look at the facts we're the lowest paid locally and nationally in all aspects, whether it's benefits or salary. If you honestly look at that, you need to come to the table and realistically resolve it. The labor negotiator, Bob Lynn, worked on our side of the table at one juncture, and he came up with a brilliant idea. He said, let's do a market adjustment, a one-time payment that brings us up to a market rate of pay, and we'll never have to have this discussion again. I think it was brilliant. I think it would work. Natalie's on the other side of the table. I guess folks told him it's not so brilliant. I still believe it would work. That's the kind of approach we expect from the city side. Here's the problem, here's a resolution, and then we can all move forward for the city of New York, where our members can worry about safety on the streets for themselves and the public, and not worry about putting food on the table, moving out of their parents' basement, or buying a home.
Are you concerned that because, you know, crime statistics are down and so low that the city can argue and say, well, you guys are doing a great job and status quo?
Well, quite frankly, and I always speak straightforward, I think it's insulting that the city's approach is, why pay them, they'll work anyway. That's insulting to every police officer that puts themselves at risk. It's insulting to the professionalism that our women and men face on the streets every day. To say, why pay them, they're gonna work anyway. So you play on their dedication and say, we'll get them on the cheap. Well, I think you should be fair, you should pay us what we're worth, and then we can focus even more deeply on the problems we face in the city. Look, there's a renaissance in the city. Our police officers, they brought it to our city street corners, but our work is not done. We know that. We read the headlines of what's going on in the street. It's not 1975, but if you don't focus on it, and our members able to focus on doing the job rather than putting food on the table, that's when it starts to slip. I don't want it to slip. I live in this city. 60% of our members live in the confines of New York City. They want safe streets, but they want to also be able to live in this city. Right now, we can't afford to do that.
Pat,
Thank you.
you went a similar direction. You went in the same direction last time around,
Yeah.
went the same route in terms of negotiating. You didn't end up with the contract that you would have liked.
Yeah.
What are you hoping is different this time, and
Yeah.
why use the same tactic when it didn't work out?
Well, we've done a couple of things. We've gone to PERB arbitration, and people are focused on the arbitration we faced before. But since that arbitration, we actually sat down with the city, and we came to an agreement that worked both for our members and for the city of New York. It worked for the department, worked for the citizens, it worked for our members. So what we've shown is we can negotiate if someone is realistically negotiating across the table. We're very reasonable. We realize we're dedicated women and men on the job. We just want to be treated respectfully, not just in words, but also professionally in our salary. So we've shown that we can negotiate. Many focus on the times that we've gone to arbitration, but we've shown through 2 administrations we can also negotiate. When we got a fair approach from the city, we got to a deal, and we stood in City Hall and announced it. We're hoping to get there again, but in this process, bringing Ken in, we're doing 2 things, quite frankly. We're hoping that the city comes to the table and negotiates in this mediation process, but if not, we're preparing to go to arbitration. We've done it before, we'll do it again. But hopefully, the city comes to the table and we can negotiate. We'd much rather do that. Yes, sir.
President Lynch, what will the union do now that the NYPD has decided to post some disciplinary matters on its website without officer names?
We're in the process of challenging that. We think New York City police officers are entitled to the same privacy as everyone else. We think it's unfair, we think it violates the law, and we will continue to challenge that in court. Any other questions? Thanks very much for taking the time today to cover such an important issue. If there's any other questions that come up, we'll gladly try to get you those answers the best we can. Thanks very much.
Thank you.